Good Friday, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for October the 14th. Today, we are reading together in Job chapter 9. We're reading the first half of Job's response to Bildad's first speech that he gives. We see that in chapter 8, a single chapter devoted to his speech. And one of the things that Bildad really focused in on in his speech is the reality of God being the Almighty. He says in verse number 3 of Job chapter 8, does God pervert justice? Does the Almighty pervert what is right? Later on, he says, verse number 5, but if you earnestly seek God and ask the Almighty for mercy, if you're pure and upright, then he will move even now on your behalf and restore your home where your righteousness dwells. So one of his, again, things that he's really emphasizing is that the Almighty is all powerful. He is all knowing. He is just in all of his ways. And he says that Bildad is saying that you just need to really seek him out and rely upon him, and he'll make things right. So Job, as he now answers Bildad, he focuses on the reality that, yes, I recognize fully that God is the Almighty. And that's kind of the problem. If we can say it in that way, that is the problem, that he is so great and so mighty and so powerful that I, being so not those things, it feels like there is a gap between us. There is a big chasm between us. There is a gulf between us that separates us. So as I try to reach out to him, I feel as if I am incapable of reaching out to God and really being heard by him and being helped by him here in this moment. So that's, I think, the idea that Job is getting at here in chapter 9. And towards the end, we're going to make note of something we're going to make note of how Job's feelings here in this moment, how his feelings are not our feelings, for one very specific reason that we are going to be very thankful for, as we mentioned it here at the end of Job chapter 9. So let's read together here, Job chapter 9 in verse number 1. Job chapter 9, verse number 1, then Job answered, he's answering to Bildad, yes, I know what you said is true, but how can a person be justified before God? If one wanted to take him to court, he could not answer God once in 1,000 times. God is wise and all-powerful. Who has opposed him and come out unharmed? He removes mountains without their knowledge, overturning them in his anger. He shakes the earth from its place so that its pillars tremble. He commands the sun not to shine and seals off the stars. He alone stretches out the heavens and treads on the waves of the sea. He makes the stars, the Bear, Orion, the Pleiades, and the constellations of the southern sky. He does great and unsearchable things, wonders without number. If he passed by me, I wouldn't see him. If he went by, I wouldn't recognize him. If he snatches something, who can stop him? Who can ask him, what are you doing? God does not hold back his anger. Rahab's assistants cringe in fear beneath him. How then can I answer him or choose my arguments against him? Even if I were in the right, I could not answer. I can only beg my judge for mercy. If I summon him and he answers me, I do not believe he would pay attention to what I said. He batters me with a whirlwind and multiplies my wounds without cause. He doesn't let me catch my breath, but fills me with bitter experiences. If it is a matter of strength, look, he is the powerful one. There it is, emphasizing, he is affirming what Bildad has said in the previous chapter. He is the powerful one. If it is a matter of justice, who can summon him? If I were in the right, my own mouth would condemn me. If I were blameless, my mouth would declare me guilty. I think this is Job saying, I'd be so nervous before him. I'd be so intimidated that even if I was standing in the right place, I would certainly say the wrong things and make it seem as if that is not the case at all. Verse 21, though I am blameless, I no longer care about myself. I renounce my life. It is all the same. Therefore, I say he destroys both the blameless and the wicked. When catastrophe brings sudden death, he mocks the despair of the innocent. The earth is handed over to the wicked. He blindfolds its judges. If it isn't he, then who is it? My days fly by faster than a runner. They flee without seeing any good. They sweep by like boats made of papyrus, like an eagle swooping down on its prey. If I said, I will forget my complaint, change my expression and smile, I would still live in terror of all my pains. I know you will not acquit me. Since I will be found guilty, why should I struggle in vain? If I wash myself with snow and cleanse my hands with lye, then you would dip me in a pit of mud, and my own clothes despise me. For he is not a man like me, that I can answer him, that we can take each other to court. There is no mediator between us to lay his hand on both of us. Let him take his rod away from me, so his terror will no longer frighten me. Then I would speak and not fear him. But that is not the case. I am on my own. Job chapter 9. Again, there is a sense here in which Job is affirming Bildad. Yes, God is the Almighty. You are absolutely correct about that. And he goes through in verses 4 through 13, just affirming all the ways in which God has displayed himself as being the Almighty One. He is the creator. He does things that we cannot even comprehend. He even terrifies the agents of chaos, that Rahab's assistants cringe in fear before him. How then can I answer him or choose my arguments against him? Job saying, I have no ability. If I were even to be able to bring God to court, if I were able to bring a case against him, I would be vastly overmatched, Job says. I would have no real ability to be able to present a case to him because he is just so much greater, so much more powerful, so much more mighty than me. Even if I had a rock solid case, as I tried to speak my case, my tongue would get tied and I would mess it up. I think at the end, beginning verse 32, for he is not a man like me that I can answer him, that we can take each other to court. There is no mediator between us to lay his hand on both of us. What a difficult position that Job finds himself in. He recognizes he is but a human. He is even a flawed human. Yes, he is a man who is righteous and blameless, but he still is a human, very limited in every way. And he says here, oh, I wish we had a mediator. Which, speaking of that, it made me think immediately of the blessed position that we find ourselves in, having a mediator between us and God, someone who does, in a sense, lay his hand on God and lay his hand on us and mediate between us. And that is Jesus. And I think about Hebrews chapter 9, beginning of verse number 11. I have this wonderful text here, which speaks about the blessing that we have in Christ as our mediator. And I wanted to read that to finish up our reading today. Again, we're looking at Job. We're looking at his struggle. He recognizes God's incredible nature. He is almighty, all powerful, all everything. And then, in a sense, opposed to him in this court, in this case, is Job, who he recognizes, I'm nothing. I'm nothing. I'm in a completely helpless position. That's why Job says, I wish I had a mediator. And thanks be to God that we have a mediator. We have Jesus, but Christ, Hebrews chapter 9, verse number 8, has appeared as a high priest of the good things that have come in the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation. He entered the most holy place once for all time, not by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, having obtained eternal redemption. For if the blood of the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a young cow, sprinkling those who are defiled, sanctify for the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, cleanse our consciences from dead works so that we can serve the living God? Therefore, he is the mediator of a new covenant, so that those who are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance, because a death has taken place for redemption from the transgressions committed under the first covenant. Speaking there specifically about those who would have been Jews living under the covenant, how they even themselves are redeemed by Jesus, that the blood of cows and goats and bulls, they couldn't truly take away sin, but it was through Jesus' sacrifice that the sacrifices were validated through faith. and that they were even redeemed and made a part of God's kingdom through Jesus. But specifically here, we have the recognition of God being holy and righteous, and we being everything but that. Again, very similar to Job's situation where he talks about God being almighty and all powerful and incredible, and Job says, I'm not. So we have these two, we have God in two different places. He is all powerful, he is almighty, he is incredible, he is righteous, he is holy, and we, putting ourselves together with Job, we're not any of those things. And yet that major bridge, that major gap between us, that chasm between us, is filled by Jesus as our mediator, who he himself gave his life for us so that he could mediate for us. And we're so thankful that he is our mediator. As I said in first John chapter 1 as well, that he serves in that role for us. He is our advocate. That's the term that is used in First John chapter 2, actually. My little children, I'm writing you these things so that you may not sin. But if anyone does sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous one. He himself is the atoning sacrifice for our sins, and not only for ours, but also for those of the whole world. Jesus is our advocate. He is our mediator. He, when we find ourselves in the same position as Job, being everything that God is not, and not being anything that God is, it is Jesus who advocates for us, who mediates for us, and we should be thankful for that. And it should help us to sympathize with Job, to really grieve with him in his situation, because he does not have in any sense what we have. He doesn't have Jesus in this place to mediate for him. And again, we're able to know what's going on behind the scenes, why all this is taking place. But at least here in this moment, he doesn't have that, and that grieves him and that pains him. For us, let's never take it for granted that we have Jesus mediating and advocating for us on our behalf to the Father, helping to bless us in every way. Let's be very thankful for that, and notice what it looks like for someone who doesn't have that. Even for a righteous man like Job, he doesn't have that advocate and mediator as we have in Jesus. And we see the sad condition in which he's in, the grief and the difficulty that he's wrestling with in this moment because of that. Let us be truly thankful for Jesus, our mediator and our advocate. Thank you so much for tuning into this reading on this Friday. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Looking forward to being back at it again tomorrow as we read together in Job chapter 10. We'll look at Job chapter 10. We'll look at the second half of Job's response to Bildad's first speech. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.